The champagne glass slipped from her fingers the moment she saw them. Her fiancé. Her best friend. Their bodies pressed together in the garden shadows like she had never existed at all. But before the glass could shatter on the stone path, a hand caught it. Cool fingers. A voice like aged whiskey in ancient storms. And when she looked up into eyes that burned gold in the darkness, he smiled and said the words that would change everything. I've been waiting for you. She found them in the garden, tangled in each other like she didn't exist. But when the Vampire King stepped from the shadows and spoke her name, the whole world went silent. Roslyn adjusted the hem of her ivory dress for the third time in 10 minutes, standing at the edge of the engagement party her mother had insisted on hosting. The chandelier light felt too bright, casting sharp glares across champagne flutes and polished smiles. Laughter erupted from a corner, the kind that felt exclusive, the kind that reminded her she'd always been on the outside of her own life. She scanned the ballroom for Garrett, her fiancé of 2 years. He wasn't by the bar anymore. Neither was Fiona, her best friend since they were 7 years old, the girl who'd held her hand at her father's funeral, who'd helped her pick this very dress. A knot twisted in her stomach, familiar and cold. The same knot she'd felt every time Garrett forgot her birthday. Every time Fiona's smile didn't quite reach her eyes when Roslyn mentioned wedding plans. She was good at ignoring that knot. Good at convincing herself she was being paranoid, insecure, too sensitive. Her mother swept past in a cloud of expensive perfume, whispering harshly, "Smile, Roslyn. People are starting to notice you standing alone like some abandoned decoration." Roslyn forced her lips upward. She was 26 and still seeking her mother's approval. Still seeking anyone's approval. She swallowed the tightness in her throat and moved toward the garden doors. Maybe Garrett had just stepped out for air. Maybe Fiona was helping him with something. Maybe she was imagining the way they'd been whispering at the rehearsal dinner, heads bent close, laughter dying the moment she approached. Across the city, in a mansion older than the nation itself, Draeven Thorne sat on a throne carved from black volcanic stone, his chin resting lazily on his fist. His brother, Kylon, paced in front of him, droning on about border disputes with a neighboring vampire clan, something about hunting rights and ancient agreements. Draeven's attention drifted. Immortality, he discovered over his 6 centuries, was spectacularly boring. Wars were predictable. Politics were recycled power plays. Love was a myth humans clung to. And yet, a whisper reached him then, carried on a thread of magic he'd woven through the city decades ago. A spell meant to alert him when something delicious was about to unfold. Betrayal. Heartbreak. The kind of chaos that made mortals beautifully reckless. He straightened, eyes gleaming gold in the dim light. Kylon, he interrupted, his voice smooth as aged whiskey, shut up. His brother froze mid-sentence, offended but obedient. Draeven stood, adjusting the cuffs of his black suit. There's a party I need to attend. You haven't attended a human gathering in 50 years, Kylon said, suspicious. Draeven grinned, all sharp edges and wicked intent. Then I'm overdue, wouldn't you say? Roslyn's fingers trembled as she pushed open the glass garden door. The night air hit her face, cool and fragrant with jasmine, and for a moment, she breathed it in, letting it steady her. Then she heard it. A soft moan. Fiona's voice, breathy and familiar in all the wrong ways. Roslyn stepped forward, her heels silent on the stone path, her heart a wild drum in her chest. And there, beneath the rose arbor strung with fairy lights, she saw them. Garrett. Fiona. His hands in her hair. Her arms wrapped around his neck. Kissing like they were the only 2 people alive. The world didn't shatter. It just stopped. Silent. Frozen. Unreal. Roslyn opened her mouth, but no sound came. That's That's when she felt it. A presence. A shift in the air, like the moment before lightning strikes. Someone was watching. Listen, if you're still here, you're already invested. Don't break my heart by not subscribing. One click and you're part of the fastest growing vampire love stories community on this platform. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, because I absolutely love knowing where my tribe is gathering. And believe me, what's about to walk out of those shadows will change everything. Let's continue. The shadows moved, and then he stepped into the light. Draeven Thorne didn't walk so much as command space to rearrange itself around him. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a black suit that looked hand-stitched by time itself, he moved through the garden like he owned not just the ground beneath his feet but the air, the night, the very concept of presence. His eyes found Roslyn first. Gold. Burning. Ancient. Garrett and Fiona sprang apart, Fiona's lipstick smeared, Garrett's shirt wrinkled. They looked at the stranger, then at Roslyn, her face pale as moonlight, her hands shaking at her sides. Roslyn, Garrett stammered, stepping forward. This isn't, we were just. Draeven laughed, low and rich, the sound rolling through the garden like thunder. Oh, don't stop on my account. I do love a good tragedy. Though I have to say, he tilted his head, his gaze sliding over Garrett with the interest one might show a cockroach. Your taste in men is devastatingly poor, darling. Roslyn blinked. Her brain couldn't process it. The betrayal. This stranger. The way he looked at her like he knew her. Who are you? She whispered. Draeven smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made empires nervous. He closed the distance between them in 3 strides, ignoring Garrett and Fiona completely, and stopped just inches from Roslyn. Close enough that she could smell cedar and smoke and something darkly sweet. He took her trembling hand, his touch cool and steady, and lifted it to his lips. His eyes never left hers. I am Draeven Thorne, he said, his voice dropping to a reverent murmur that somehow carried to every corner of the garden. And I've come to ask for your hand. The world tilted. In marriage, he clarified, his grin sharpening. Publicly. Loudly. Right now. Roslyn's mouth opened. Closed. No words came. Behind them, the garden doors burst open. Party guests spilled out, drawn by the commotion, her mother at the front, her face a mask of horror and confusion. Draeven didn't even glance at them. His attention was absolute, fixed on Roslyn like she was the only person who'd ever mattered. What do you say, Roslyn? He asked softly, though his voice carried to the growing crowd. Will you marry a king, or spend your life with a coward who kisses your best friend in the garden at your own engagement party? Garrett sputtered. Now wait just a damn minute. Who do you think you? Draeven finally looked at him. Just looked. And Garrett's words died in his throat, his face going gray. You were saying? Draeven's tone was pleasant. His eyes were molten gold and promised violence. Garrett took a step back. Fiona grabbed his arm, her voice shaking. Garrett, who is this man? Not a man, Draeven corrected, almost cheerfully. Do keep up, darling. Roslyn's heart slammed against her ribs. Her thoughts were a storm. This was insane. Impossible. He was a stranger. This was some kind of elaborate prank or fever dream or mental breakdown finally manifesting after years of swallowing her feelings. And yet, his hand still held hers. Solid. Real. The first thing that had felt real in months. I don't know you, she breathed. Not yet, he agreed. But you will. And I promise you, Roslyn, I will never waste your time pretending to love you while desiring another. His eyes flicked to Garrett with pure disdain. I'm many things. Brutal, yes. Unforgiving, absolutely. But I am not a liar, and I do not betray those under my protection. Her mother's shrill voice cut through. Roslyn, get away from him right now. Garrett, call security. Draeven sighed, the sound of a man deeply inconvenienced. Mrs. Hartley, your daughter is about to make the most important decision of her life. I suggest you let her make it herself for once. Roslyn felt the words land in her chest like a punch. Make it herself. For once. When had she last made a choice that was truly hers? She looked at Garrett. At Fiona, tears now streaming down her face, whether from guilt or fear of being caught. Roslyn couldn't tell and suddenly didn't care. She looked back at Draeven. At this impossible, dangerous, beautiful stranger who'd appeared the moment her life collapsed. Why? She asked. Why me? His expression softened, just a fraction, something genuine flickering beneath the theatrical confidence. Because I've walked this earth for 600 years, and I have never seen someone so determined to make themselves small for people who don't deserve to breathe the same air. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper only she could hear. I want to see what you look like when you finally take up space. Her breath caught. He straightened, addressing the crowd now, his voice ringing with authority that made people instinctively straighten their spines. I am Draeven Thorne, King of the Northern Territories, and I am claiming this woman as my bride. Anyone who objects can take it up with me personally. His smile was all teeth. I promise it will be the last objection you ever make. Silence. Utter, breathless silence. Then her mother fainted. The hotel suite Draeven had secured, without asking her permission, was larger than Roslyn's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, and she stood in front of them now, arms wrapped around herself, still wearing the ivory engagement dress that felt like a costume from someone else's life. Behind her, Draeven poured 2 glasses of something dark and expensive. You can't just do that, she said finally, her voice tight. You can't just show up and propose to a complete stranger and expect. And yet I did. He appeared beside her, offering a glass. When she didn't take it, he set it on the windowsill. You're welcome, by the way. She spun to face him. Welcome? You humiliated me in front of everyone I know. His eyebrow arched. I humiliated you? He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming in the quiet room. Forgive me, I thought that honor belonged to the fiancé currently scrambling to explain to your guests why he had his tongue down your best friend's throat. The words hit like a slap. Roslyn flinched, tears burning hot behind her eyes. She refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of him. You don't know anything about my life, she whispered. I know you were about to apologize to him. Draeven's voice went soft, dangerous. I could see it in your eyes. You were already crafting the words, weren't you? Wondering what you did wrong. How you failed to keep his attention. Stop. I know that everyone in that ballroom would have convinced you to forgive him. Your mother would have insisted. Fiona would have cried and begged. And you would have smiled and swallowed the pain because that's what good girls do. Stop. Her voice cracked. He did. The silence stretched between them, heavy with truth she didn't want to face. Roslyn turned back to the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. Why did you really do this? People don't just show up and propose marriage to save strangers from bad relationships. What do you want from me? Draeven was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had lost its mocking edge. I told you. I want to see who you are when you stop performing for people who don't appreciate the show. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have tonight. She shook her head, exhausted suddenly, the adrenaline draining away and leaving only the crushing weight of reality. This is insane. I can't marry you. I don't even know if you're serious or if this is some kind of game. Oh, I'm entirely serious. He moved to stand beside her again, hands in his pockets, his reflection joining hers in the glass. Though I'll admit, I do enjoy the game. I want to go home. To the apartment you share with Fiona? His tone was mild. Bold choice. Roslyn's stomach dropped. She'd forgotten. The apartment. The life she'd built. Every piece of it was tangled up with either Garrett or Fiona or her mother's expectations. Where exactly was home? Draeven watched her face, seeing the realization dawn. Stay here tonight, he said, and for the first time, it sounded like a request rather than a command. Tomorrow, we'll talk. Really talk. And if you decide you want nothing to do with me, I'll disappear like I was never there. He paused. But Roslyn, before you make that choice, ask yourself one question. She looked at him, waiting. When was the last time someone chose you first? The words landed in her chest and stayed there, burning. He walked to the door, then turned back. The bedroom is through there. I'll take the couch. You're safe here. I promise you that. Why should I trust you? He smiled, sad and ancient. You shouldn't. But you do. I can hear it in your heartbeat. Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. Roslyn stood alone in the suite, her reflection staring back at her, and for the first time in years, she didn't recognize herself. Maybe that wasn't a bad thing. Morning came with a knock at the bedroom door and the smell of coffee. Roslyn had barely slept, spending most of the night replaying the garden scene, her phone buzzing with increasingly frantic messages from her mother, Garrett, even Fiona. She'd turned it off around 3 in the morning. I'm assuming you're awake, Draeven's voice came through the door. Your heartbeat changed rhythm 20 minutes ago. Creepy. That was creepy. And yet she found herself answering. I'm awake. Breakfast is ready. And you have visitors. That got her out of bed. She'd slept in the slip she'd worn under her dress, and now she grabbed the hotel robe, wrapping it tightly. When she emerged, Draeven was indeed on the couch, looking entirely too composed for someone who'd spent the night on furniture, dressed in dark slacks and a charcoal henley that fit him like a sin. He gestured to the dining table, where an elaborate breakfast spread waited. I wasn't sure what you liked, so I ordered everything. You said I have visitors? In the lobby. Your mother. Garrett. Fiona. And approximately a dozen people with cameras. His smile was wicked. Apparently we're trending on social media. Vampire King claims betrayed bride. It has a nice ring to it. Roslyn's blood went cold. Vampire King? People think that's real? People think it's a publicity stunt. A performance art piece. Very avant-garde. He poured her coffee, added cream without asking how she took it, and somehow got it exactly right. Though a few do believe it's real, and they're not wrong. She stared at him. You're not actually saying you're a vampire? Yes. He said it the way someone might say they were left-handed. Casual. Factual. 637 years old, give or take a decade. I lose track sometimes. Roslyn sat down hard in the nearest chair. The coffee sat steaming in front of her. This man, this creature, had just confirmed he was a literal vampire, and he was serving her breakfast. I'm calling a cab, she said. I'm leaving. This is overwhelming? Terrifying? The most interesting thing that's ever happened to you? Insane. That too. Draeven sat across from her, relaxed, like they were discussing the weather. But you're not calling a cab. You're going to drink that coffee, eat something, because you barely ate at that party last night, and then you're going to let me help you face the circus downstairs. Why would I do any of that? Because the alternative is facing them alone, and darling, you've been alone in crowds your entire life. Aren't you exhausted? The question hit too close, too deep. Her phone, which she turned back on out of habit, buzzed on the table. Draeven glanced at it. That's Garrett. 17th call this morning. Persistent for a cheater. Don't read my phone. I can hear it from here. Vampire senses. He tapped his ear. Also, he's rehearsing an apology in the lobby. It's terrible. He's blaming alcohol and stress. Despite everything, Roslyn felt a bitter laugh escape. Of course he is. Fiona is crying. Also blaming alcohol. And you, partially. She's telling your mother that you've been distant, that Garrett needed emotional support you weren't providing. The laugh died. She's what? Draeven's expression darkened, his eyes flashing gold. Humans are remarkable creatures. The way they can rewrite history to absolve themselves would be impressive if it wasn't so vile. Roslyn's hands shook as she picked up the coffee. She took a sip. It was perfect, and she hated that he'd known how she took it, like he'd been watching her longer than just last night. How long have you been watching me? She asked quietly. He had the grace to look slightly apologetic. 3 weeks. I sensed something building. The magic I work with, it attunes me to moments of transformation. Betrayals. Awakenings. I was curious. He leaned forward. Then I saw you, practicing your smile in the mirror before that party. Telling yourself you were being silly for doubting him. And I thought, here is someone who deserves better than what she's been given. That's stalking. Yes, he agreed. I contain multitudes. Stalker. King. Occasional savior. Frequent menace. His grin was sharp. But never boring, and never a liar. A crash from below made them both look toward the door. Shouting. Draeven tilted his head, listening to something she couldn't hear. Garrett just tried to force his way past security. He's demanding to see you, to explain. Draeven stood, buttoning his cuffs with deliberate precision. Shall we go down? Or would you like me to handle it? Handle it how? His smile was all predator. I promise not to kill him. Maim, perhaps. Terrify, absolutely. But no permanent damage. You can't just. Roslyn. He crossed to her, crouching so they were eye level. I can, and I will, but only if that's what you want. This is your choice. Face them with me. Face them alone. Or don't face them at all. We can leave the city entirely. I have homes in 7 countries. He paused. But I think you want to face them. I think you want them to see that you're not broken. Am I wrong? She held his gaze, those impossible gold eyes that saw too much. I want them to know they didn't destroy me, she whispered. Draeven's smile softened into something almost tender. Then let's make sure they know. What would you do if you were Roslyn right now? Face them or disappear? Tell me in the comments because I'm genuinely curious how you'd handle this mess. The lobby was chaos. Roslyn descended the staircase beside Draeven, having refused the elevator because she wanted them to see her coming. wanted to walk down those stairs like she owned the world, even if her knees were shaking beneath the borrowed dress Draeven had somehow procured, a deep emerald silk that fit like it was made for her. Shoulders back, Draeven murmured beside her, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back. You are not walking toward them. They are waiting for you. There's a difference. She straightened. Garrett saw her first. He pushed past 2 security guards, his face a mess of desperation and rehearsed regret. Roslyn. Thank God, I've been trying to reach you all night. You have to let me explain, what you saw, it wasn't. Wasn't what? Draeven's voice cut through like a blade. Wasn't your tongue in her mouth? Wasn't your hands in her hair? Because I saw it quite clearly, and I have excellent vision. Garrett's face reddened. This is between me and my fiancé. Former fiancé, Roslyn said, and the word felt like freedom. Her mother pushed forward, elegant even in crisis, her eyes darting between Roslyn and Draeven with barely concealed horror. Roslyn, darling, we can fix this. Whatever happened last night, whatever this man has told you, Garrett loves you. Couples have problems. You work through them. He was kissing Fiona, mother. And that's terrible, but people make mistakes. You don't throw away a good match over one mistake. One mistake? Roslyn laughed, and it sounded foreign to her own ears. How many mistakes constitute enough, mother? How many times should I smile and swallow my feelings and pretend everything is fine? Her mother's lips pressed into a thin line. Don't be dramatic. You're making a scene. No. Draeven stepped forward, and something in his presence made everyone take an involuntary step back. She's finally speaking. Perhaps for the first time in her life. I suggest you listen. Fiona appeared then, mascara streaked, clutching Garrett's arm like a lifeline. Rose, please. I never meant for this to happen. We just fell into each other repeatedly over the past 6 months? Draeven offered helpfully. Yes, I'm aware. The hotel security footage was quite illuminating. Different hotels, same pattern. You're creatures of habit, I'll give you that. The color drained from both their faces. Roslyn turned to look at him. 6 months? He nodded, something soft flickering in his ancient eyes. I'm sorry. I debated whether to tell you. But you deserve the truth, even when it cuts. 6 months. Half a year of lies. Of looking into Fiona's eyes and believing they were sisters. Of kissing Garrett goodnight and thinking she was loved. Her mother stepped forward again. Roslyn, even so, think about what you're doing. This man, whoever he is, you don't know him. Garrett has a good job. A good family. A future. What does this stranger offer you? Everything you never did, Roslyn said quietly. The words hung in the air. Her mother's face went pale. Draeven watched the exchange, then gently took Roslyn's arm. Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere less public. No. Roslyn stood her ground. I want them to hear this. I want everyone to hear this. She looked at her mother, years of swallowed pain rising to the surface. You never once asked if I was happy. Not when I graduated. Not when I got engaged. Not once in 26 years did you ask what I wanted. It was always about appearances. About what looked right. About finding a man who would make the family proud. She gestured at Garrett. Well, there he is, mother. Your perfect choice. Are you proud? Silence. Draeven leaned close to her ear. Magnificently done. But there's more you need to know, and not here. Come with me. She let him guide her through the crowd, past the flashing cameras, past Garrett's desperate calls and her mother's stunned silence, and into a waiting car with windows so dark they might as well have been solid. The car pulled away, and Roslyn finally exhaled. Where are we going? My home. There are things you need to understand about who I am and why I truly came for you. He paused, staring out the window at the passing city. I haven't been entirely honest, and if we're to build something real, that has to change. 20 minutes later, they stood in a mansion that looked like it belonged in another century. Oil paintings lined the walls, faces that shared Draeven's sharp cheekbones and golden eyes. A fire crackled in a massive hearth despite the mild weather outside. My family, he said, following her gaze. Or what remains of it. He stopped before one portrait in particular. A woman with dark hair and kind eyes, standing beside a young Draeven, centuries younger, his face softer, almost innocent. My sister. Ilara. His voice was rough. She was human when I was turned. I thought I could protect her, keep her safe from the darkness I'd become. But there was a man. A lord. He courted her, promised her the world. His jaw tightened. He was already married. Already a liar. He used her, discarded her, and when she came to me broken, I was away fighting a war I thought mattered more than family. Roslyn watched his profile, the ancient grief carved into every line. She took her own life 3 days before I returned. Draeven. I found the Lord who destroyed her. I found his entire bloodline. And I made sure none of them would ever hurt anyone again. He turned to face her, his eyes burning gold. That is who I am, Roslyn. I protect those I claim as mine with every brutal inch of my soul. And I punish those who harm them without mercy, without exception, without end. She should have been terrified. This man, this ancient creature, was confessing to generational revenge, to violence beyond imagining. But all she could see was the grief. The love beneath the brutality. Why me? She asked again, the question that kept circling. Why come for me? He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture impossibly gentle from hands that had dealt so much death. Because when I saw you in that ballroom, I saw Ilara. Not her face, but her situation. A woman brilliant and kind, surrounded by people who couldn't see her worth, being crushed slowly by expectations and betrayals. His voice dropped. I couldn't save my sister. But I could save you. I could give you the choice she never had. Roslyn's eyes burned with tears she didn't try to hide this time. I'm not looking for a project, she whispered. I don't want to be saved because I remind you of someone you lost. You're not. He took her hands in his. You remind me of what I failed. But you are not her. You are fiercer than you know, stronger than they've let you believe. I want to see who you become when no one is holding you back. He paused. And yes, perhaps I want redemption. Perhaps saving you saves a part of me that's been broken for centuries. But Roslyn, I have lived 600 years without hope. Meeting you gave me something I thought was dead forever. What? Possibility. She stood there, in this ancient house full of ghosts, holding the hands of a monster who wept for his sister, and felt something shift in her chest. Not love, not yet. But the space where love could grow. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. I don't know how to be with someone who isn't trying to control me. Then we learned together. His smile was crooked, almost boyish. I'm 600 years old and I'm still learning. You have time. For the first time since she'd found Garrett in that garden, Roslyn smiled. And meant it. The days that followed were strange and wonderful. Draeven's mansion had 17 bedrooms, a library that spanned 3 floors, and a kitchen larger than Roslyn's entire childhood home. She had her own wing, her own space, and for the first time in her life, no one demanding anything from her. It was disorienting and freeing. On the 3rd morning, she wandered into the kitchen to find Draeven attempting to cook breakfast. Smoke billowed from a pan. Something that might have once been eggs sat charred and defeated on a plate. "Before you say anything," he said without turning around, "I want you to know that I once conquered 3 kingdoms in a single century. Eggs should not be this difficult." Roslyn laughed, the sound surprising her. "Have you considered that conquering and cooking require different skill sets?" "Nonsense. Both require patience, strategy, and knowing when to apply heat." He stared at the smoking pan with genuine confusion. "Though I may have miscalculated the heat." She crossed the kitchen and gently took the spatula from his hand. "Let me." He stepped back, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You cook?" "I survived college on a budget." "You learn fast." She cracked fresh eggs into a clean pan, moving with practiced ease. "Besides, Fiona always burned everything. Someone had to feed us." The name slipped out before she could stop it. The ease in the room faltered. Draeven leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Do you miss her?" Roslyn considered the question honestly. "I miss who I thought she was. The friend who held my hand at my father's funeral. Who stayed up all night with me when I had nightmares." She flipped the eggs. But that person might never have existed. Maybe she was always waiting for the chance to take what was mine. People reveal themselves eventually. The mask always slips. Yours hasn't. He smiled, slow and genuine. "Perhaps I'm not wearing one. Perhaps what you see is simply what I am. Ancient, dramatic, devastatingly handsome, and terrible at eggs." She rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. "Your humility is inspiring. I've had 6 centuries to cultivate it." They ate breakfast together at a table meant for 20, sitting at one end like conspirators sharing secrets. Draeven told her about the places he'd seen, cities that no longer existed, empires that had crumbled to dust, love affairs with queens and artists and revolutionaries. "You've had many lovers," she observed, not jealous, just curious. "Many," he agreed. "But none who stayed." Immortality is lonely, Roslyn. You watch everyone you care for wither and die. Eventually, you stop letting yourself care. But you let yourself care about Alara. His expression flickered with old pain. "She was my sister. I didn't have a choice." He paused, swirling the coffee in his cup. "And then I closed myself off for centuries. Told myself I was protecting myself when really I was just afraid." "What changed?" He looked at her, those golden eyes softer than she'd ever seen them. "You. That night in the garden. The way you looked so shattered but still standing. I thought, there's someone who refuses to break." I wanted to know her. Roslyn felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I felt pretty broken. Broken and destroyed are different things. You bent. You didn't shatter. That takes extraordinary strength." No one had ever called her strong before. Her mother called her difficult. Garrett called her sensitive. Fiona called her intense. Strength was new. That afternoon, Draeven showed her the library. 3 floors of books spanning centuries, first editions and handwritten manuscripts, poetry and philosophy and novels in languages she didn't recognize. "This is incredible," she breathed, running her fingers along spines that smelled of age and wisdom. "It's my favorite room. When the world becomes too loud, I come here." He pulled a book from a shelf, leather-bound and worn. This was Alara's favorite. She used to read it aloud to me when we were children, before everything changed. He handed it to her. She opened it carefully, the pages fragile and yellowed. Poetry, in an old English she could barely decipher. "Will you read it to me?" she asked. "The way she used to?" Something shifted in his face. Vulnerability, raw and unexpected. "I haven't read it aloud since she died." "Then maybe it's time." He took the book back, sat in one of the massive leather chairs, and after a long moment, began to read. His voice was different now, softer, younger somehow, carrying the cadence of another era. Roslyn curled up in the chair opposite him and listened. The words washed over her, beautiful and melancholy, and she watched this ancient creature become someone else entirely. Not a king. Not a monster. Just a brother who missed his sister. When he finished, silence filled the library. "Thank you," she whispered. He closed the book, his eyes suspiciously bright. "Thank you. For asking. For seeing the parts one hide. You see the parts one hide too. Perhaps that's why we found each other." The moment stretched between them, fragile and warm. Roslyn felt something unfamiliar blooming in her chest. Not love, not yet. But the beginning of it. The soil where love could take root. That night, they sat on the mansion's rooftop terrace, watching the city lights flicker below. Draeven had produced a bottle of wine older than her grandparents and 2 glasses. "Can vampires get drunk?" she asked. "Not on wine. But I enjoy the ritual." He poured for both of them. "Besides, watching you get tipsy is entertaining." "I'm not tipsy." "You giggled at my joke about the French Revolution." "It wasn't that funny." She laughed again, proving his point. "Fine. Maybe a little tipsy." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only forms between people who no longer need words to fill space. "I could get used to this," she admitted quietly. "Being seen. Being chosen. Then get used to it." "I'm not going anywhere." "You say that now. But forever is a long time." He turned to look at her, his expression serious. "I've been alive for 600 years, Roslyn. I've seen empires rise and fall. I've watched oceans change their shores. And I have never, not once, said something I didn't mean." He reached over and took her hand. "I chose you. That choice doesn't expire." She squeezed his hand back. "I'm starting to believe you." "Good. That's progress." Somewhere in the city below, a siren wailed. Life continued, chaotic and messy. But up here, in this moment, everything was peaceful. Roslyn didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't know if she could really build a life with an immortal creature who'd killed entire bloodlines for vengeance. She didn't know if her heart was ready to trust again. But for the first time in years, she wanted to find out. And that was enough. For now. Do you think Roslyn should let herself fall for Draeven completely, or is she moving too fast? Tell me what you think, because this is getting intense and I want to know if you're feeling what I'm feeling right now. 1 week of peace. That's all they had before everything collapsed. Roslyn woke to the sound of voices downstairs. Raised voices. She pulled on a robe and crept to the landing, peering down into the grand foyer. Her mother stood there, flanked by 2 men in expensive suits. Lawyers, from the look of them. And behind them, Garrett and Fiona, looking smugly triumphant. Draeven faced them all, his posture relaxed but his eyes burning gold with barely contained fury. "You have no legal claim to her," her mother was saying. "She's clearly been manipulated, possibly drugged. We're prepared to file charges. Mother? Roslyn descended the stairs, her voice sharp. What are you doing here? Her mother's face shifted to practiced concern. Darling, we're here to bring you home. This man, this creature, he's dangerous. We've done research. The Thorne family has a history of violence, disappearances, women who were never seen again. That's absurd. Is it? Garrett stepped forward, holding a folder. We hired investigators, Rose. This guy isn't just some eccentric billionaire. He's connected to deaths spanning centuries. Entire family lines wiped out. Roslyn looked at Draeven, expecting him to deny it. He didn't. He told me about that, she said, her voice steady. He was protecting his sister. His sister who died 400 years ago? Fiona's voice was poison wrapped in silk. Roslyn, he's obsessed with a dead woman. And you look just like her. The words hit like ice water. Roslyn turned to Draeven. That's not, she didn't look like me. The portrait. But even as she said it, doubt crept in. She'd only seen one portrait. And in that portrait, Alara's hair had been darker, her features different. But Draeven had never shown her other pictures. Had never let her explore certain rooms. Show her, her mother commanded. Show her the private gallery you keep locked. Draeven's jaw tightened. Roslyn, whatever they've told you. Show me. Silence stretched between them. Then he turned and walked toward a door she'd never seen him open. She followed, her heart hammering, while her mother and the others waited below. The room was small, intimate, lined with portraits and photographs spanning centuries. And in every single one, there was a woman. Different eras. Different names. Different faces. But they all shared something. A certain tilt to the chin. A softness in the eyes. A resemblance that became undeniable when you saw them all together. They all looked like her. You said I wasn't a replacement, Roslyn whispered, her voice breaking. You said I wasn't her. You're not. Draeven's voice was strained. These women, I tried to save them. Like Alara. Women who were being destroyed by people who didn't deserve them. And where are they now? He didn't answer. Draeven. Where are they now? They moved on. Found new lives. I helped them escape their circumstances and then I let them go. All of them? He hesitated. One heartbeat too long. Most of them. Roslyn's blood went cold. What happened to the others? Some couldn't be saved. Some were too broken by what had been done to them. Some. His voice dropped. Some chose to end their pain themselves. Like Alara. Yes. She stepped back, her hand pressed to her chest like she could hold her heart together by force. So that's what I am. Another broken woman for you to fix. Another project to ease your guilt over your dead sister. That's not. How many of them did you propose to, Draeven? How many of them thought they were special? His expression shattered. You are special. You're different. I've never felt. Stop. Her voice was ice. I trusted you. I let myself believe that someone finally chose me for me. But I'm just a pattern, aren't I? A type. A wound you keep reopening because you can't forgive yourself for Alara. Roslyn, please. No. She was crying now, hot tears streaming down her face. I spent my whole life being invisible to people who claimed to love me. And I thought you saw me. really saw me. But you don't see me at all. You see her ghost. She walked past him, past the portraits of women who might have stood exactly where she was standing, feeling exactly what she was feeling. Roslyn. His voice cracked. Don't go back to them. They'll destroy you. She stopped at the doorway but didn't turn around. Maybe. But at least with them, I know exactly what kind of pain to expect. Her voice was hollow. You made me believe in something impossible. That's worse. That's so much worse. She walked out of the room, down the stairs, and into her mother's waiting arms. Draeven stood alone in the gallery of ghosts, surrounded by faces that would never forgive him, and felt something he hadn't felt in centuries. Despair. Roslyn left with her mother that night. She didn't look back. But if she had, she would have seen him standing at the window, watching her go, his immortal heart breaking for the first time since he'd buried his sister 400 years ago. Some wounds never heal. Some mistakes echo forever. And some loves, it seemed, were doomed before they even began. 3 weeks passed like poison dripping slow. Roslyn moved back into her childhood bedroom at her mother's house. Not the apartment with Fiona, never again there, but her mother's pristine suburban prison where every surface gleamed and every emotion was polished away. Garrett came by twice. The first time, he brought flowers and apologies. Her mother let him in. Roslyn let him talk. I made a mistake, he said, sitting on the edge of the same couch where he'd first told her he loved her. Fiona meant nothing. She was just available. You were always so distant, so wrapped up in your own head. I needed someone who was present. Roslyn listened to every word. Then she stood up, walked to the door, and opened it. Leave. Rose, I'm trying to. You needed someone present? I planned our entire wedding while working 60 hours a week. I was present. You just weren't looking. Her voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. Leave, Garrett. And don't come back. He left. The second time he came, a week later, he brought a ring. A bigger one. Her mother practically vibrated with approval. I know I hurt you, he said, on one knee in the living room like a performance. But I want to make it right. Marry me, Roslyn. For real this time. No more mistakes. Her mother gripped her arm. Think about your future, darling. He's willing to forgive this whole embarrassing episode with that Thorne man. Not many men would be so generous. Forgive her. Like she was the one who'd done something wrong. Roslyn looked at the ring. Looked at Garrett's practiced smile. Looked at her mother's desperate hope. And she felt nothing. No. The word hung in the air like a guillotine blade. No. Her mother's voice pitched high. Roslyn, be reasonable. What else do you have? You quit your job. You have no apartment. This fantasy with that monster is over. Garrett is offering you a life. A life where I'm invisible. A life where I smile and shrink and pretend I don't notice when he looks at other women. Roslyn shook her head. That's not a life, Mother. That's a slow death, and I'm done dying for people who don't love me. She walked upstairs and locked her bedroom door. That night, she sat by the window and thought about Draeven. She hadn't heard from him. Not a call. Not a letter. Not even a message through some supernatural means. Part of her was relieved. Part of her was devastated. Had she been wrong to leave? He'd lied. Hidden the truth about those other women. Made her feel special when she was just another in a long line of broken birds he tried to fix. But he'd also been the first person to see her strength. The first to call her fierce. The first to choose her loudly, publicly, without shame. Was that real? Or was it part of the pattern? She didn't know anymore. Across the city, in a mansion that had never felt so empty, Draeven sat in the gallery of portraits and drank blood from a crystal glass. Kylon had come by twice to check on him. Both times, Draeven had thrown something at his head. "You're being dramatic," Kylon said the second time, dodging a vase. "She's just a human. There will be others. Get out. Brother, in 600 years, you've done the same dance a dozen times. Find the broken girl. Save her. Watch her leave. Mourn for a decade. Repeat." Kylon crossed his arms. "Maybe it's time to break the cycle. I said get out." Kylon left, but his words stayed. The cycle. Draeven stared at the portraits. Kylon was right, and he hated that Kylon was right. He'd been repeating the same pattern for centuries, trying to save Alara through every woman who reminded him of her. But Roslyn wasn't like the others. With the others, he'd felt duty. Purpose. The satisfaction of a good deed. With Roslyn, he felt seen. When she'd made him eggs that morning, when she'd asked him to read Alara's poetry, when she'd sat on the rooftop and told him she was starting to believe him, he'd felt something he thought was long dead. Hope. And then he'd watched her walk away, and hope had died all over again. He could let her go. That's what he'd done with all the others. Help them escape, then fade into the shadows and let them live their human lives. But the thought of Roslyn going back to that hollow existence, marrying Garrett or someone like him, shrinking herself until there was nothing left. It made him want to burn the world. He stood abruptly, the glass shattering on the floor. Kylon. His brother appeared in the doorway, wary. Yes. I need to find her. The human? Brother, she made her choice. She left. She left because I wasn't honest. Because I let my past poison what we were building. Draeven's eyes blazed gold. I've spent 600 years running from my failure with Alara. Punishing bloodlines. Saving strangers. Trying to rewrite a tragedy I can never undo. And I'm tired. His voice cracked, just slightly. I'm tired of being haunted. I'm tired of protecting myself from the chance of real connection. He met his brother's eyes. Roslyn isn't Alara. She's not a ghost I'm chasing. She's the first person in centuries who made me want to be someone new. Kylon was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. So what are you going to do? Draeven straightened, a new resolve hardening his features. I'm going to tell her the truth. All of it. And then I'm going to give her a real choice, not a desperate proposal in a garden, but an honest offer from a man who has spent 600 years being afraid to love. And if she says no? Draeven's jaw tightened. Then I'll let her go. For real this time. No more patterns. No more cycles. He walked toward the door, then paused. But I don't think she'll say no. Why not? For the first time in weeks, Draeven smiled. It was small, fragile, but real. Because she's as tired of being afraid as I am. Do you think Roslyn should give Draeven another chance, or has he already broken her trust beyond repair? Tell me in the comments because this moment right here is everything. Roslyn's mother threw an engagement party. Not for Roslyn and Garrett, not officially, but everyone knew that's what it was. A second chance celebration. A way to pretend the last month hadn't happened. Roslyn stood in the corner of the ballroom in a dress her mother had chosen, holding a champagne flute she hadn't sipped from, watching history prepare to repeat itself. Garrett worked the room, shaking hands, laughing too loud, already playing a role of devoted fiancé even though she hadn't said yes. Fiona was notably absent, banished from the inner circle now that she'd served her purpose of breaking them apart. Her mother floated through the crowd, radiating satisfaction. And Roslyn felt herself disappearing. She set down the champagne glass. She couldn't do this. She wouldn't do this. She turned toward the exit. The doors exploded open. Not literally, but the force of his presence made it feel that way. Every head turned. Every conversation died. The string quartet stopped mid-note. Draeven Thorne walked into the ballroom like he owned not just the room but the very concept of time. He was dressed in a black suit that probably cost more than the entire venue. His golden eyes swept the crowd with barely concealed disdain until they found her. And when they did, his entire expression transformed. Softened. Became human. "I believe," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the silent room, "that I owe this woman an apology." The crowd parted as he walked toward her. Garrett stepped forward, face red with fury. "You need to leave. Now. Before I call." Draeven didn't even look at him. He simply raised one hand, and Garrett froze mid-sentence, his eyes going wide with primal fear. "I wasn't speaking to you, boy." Draeven's voice was pleasant, conversational, absolutely terrifying. "In fact, I don't recall giving you permission to speak at all. So perhaps you should find a corner and practice being silent. It's a skill you'll need when you're alone for the rest of your unremarkable life." Garrett stumbled backward. Roslyn's mother surged forward. "How dare you come here after what you did to my daughter?" "Security." Draeven finally looked at her, and his smile was all teeth. "Mrs. Hartley. Lovely to see you again. Tell me, did you ever ask your daughter what she wanted? Or were you too busy planning a wedding to a man who spent 6 months betraying her in hotel rooms across the city?" Her mother's face went gray. "I have records," Draeven continued cheerfully. "Dates. Times. Photographs. I also have excellent lawyers and a petty streak that spans centuries. So unless you'd like your social circle to receive a very detailed newsletter about your future son-in-law's extracurricular activities, I suggest you sit down and let me speak to Roslyn." Her mother sat. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Draeven closed the distance between himself and Roslyn. He stopped just inches from her. Close enough to touch. Close enough to hurt. "I lied to you," he said quietly, his voice now meant only for her. "Not in words, but in omissions. I hid the gallery. I hid the pattern. I told myself I was protecting you, but really I was protecting myself. Draeven. Let me finish. Please." He took her hands in his cool fingers wrapping around her trembling ones. "I have spent 600 years trying to save my sister through every woman who reminded me of her. And when I saw you in that garden, I thought, here's another one. Another broken bird to rescue." Her heart cracked. "But I was wrong." His voice roughened. "You're not a broken bird, Roslyn. You're a phoenix. Every time life has burned you down, you've risen. Quieter, maybe. More cautious. But still rising. Still fighting. And somewhere in these past weeks, I stopped wanting to save you." "Then what do you want?" He lifted her hands to his lips, the gesture a mirror of that first night in the garden. "I want to stand beside you while you save yourself. I want to watch you become everything you were always meant to be. I want to earn the right to love you, not through grand gestures, but through showing up every single day until you believe that I see you. His eyes burned into hers. Not Alara. Not a pattern. You. Roslyn. The woman who makes terrible coffee and laughs at my jokes and asked me to read poetry I hadn't touched in 400 years. Tears streamed down her face. How do I know this isn't just another version of the same cycle? You don't. He was brutally honest. I can't promise I won't make mistakes. I can't promise my past won't haunt us. But I can promise that I will never lie to you again, never hide parts of myself, and never, ever let you feel invisible. He paused. I can also promise that anyone who tries to hurt you will face consequences that span generations. I'm romantic like that. A laugh escaped her, watery and broken. That's not normal. I'm not normal. I'm a 600-year-old vampire king who makes terrible eggs and has a flair for dramatic entrances. His smile turned tender. But I'm yours, if you'll have me. Not as a savior. Not as a replacement for anything you've lost. Just as someone who wants to spend eternity learning every part of who you are. Roslyn looked at him. At this impossible, ancient, ridiculous creature who had turned her world upside down. Behind them, her mother made a strangled sound of protest. Garrett was still frozen in the corner. The crowd watched like they were witnessing history. And maybe they were. You really hurt me, she whispered. When I saw that gallery. I know. And I will spend as long as it takes making that right. He cupped her face in his hands. But Roslyn, I need to ask you again. Properly this time. No theatrics. No audience. Just you and me. There's literally an audience right now. Ignore them. I do. She laughed again, stronger this time. Draeven dropped to one knee. The crowd gasped. Roslyn Hartley. I'm not asking you to marry me tonight. I'm not asking you to trust me completely. I'm asking for a chance. One real chance to prove that what we have isn't a pattern, isn't a ghost story, but something new. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring, simple and elegant, nothing like the gaudy diamond Garrett had offered. Wear this not as a promise to me, but as a promise to yourself. A promise that you will never shrink again. Never disappear. Never let anyone make you feel less than extraordinary. She stared at the ring. At him. And if I say no? Then I'll walk out of here and never bother you again. I'll carry the regret for eternity, but I'll respect your choice. His voice was steady, but his eyes were not. For the first time, she saw real fear in them. But I hope you won't say no. Because Roslyn, meeting you made me feel something I thought was dead forever. What? He smiled, echoing his words from that night in the gallery. Possibility. The room held its breath. Roslyn looked at her mother's horrified face. At Garrett's defeated posture. At all the people who had spent her entire life telling her what she should want, who she should be. Then she looked at Draeven. At this ancient creature kneeling before her, offering not possession, but partnership. She reached down and took the ring. Yes. The word was quiet, but it echoed like thunder. Draeven rose, his face breaking into a smile so genuine it transformed him entirely. He slid the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms. I'm going to make you so happy, he murmured against her hair. You're going to make me insane. Also that. They're not mutually exclusive. She laughed, really laughed, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Free. Behind them, her mother stood abruptly. Roslyn, this is madness. You can't seriously. Draeven turned, one arm still wrapped around Roslyn, and smiled at her mother with all the warmth of a winter grave. "Mrs. Hartley, your daughter has made her choice. I suggest you learn to live with it." His eyes glittered gold. "Or don't. Either way, she's coming with me, and there's nothing in this world or any other that will change that." He looked down at Roslyn. "Ready?" She nodded. They walked out of the ballroom together, past the stunned guests, past the fallen champagne glasses, past the life she was leaving behind. At the door, Roslyn paused and looked back. Her mother stood frozen. Garrett had finally unfrozen, looking lost. The party guests whispered furiously. "Goodbye, Mother," Roslyn said. "When you're ready to see me as a person instead of an accessory, you know where to find me." Then she walked into the night with a vampire king, and for the first time in her life, she didn't look back. The city sprawled before them, lit up like scattered diamonds. "So," Draeven said, opening the door of a sleek black car. "Where would you like to go first? Paris? Tokyo? I have a lovely castle in Scotland that's been empty for centuries." Roslyn slid into the car, pulling him in after her. "Surprise me." He grinned, that sharp, wicked grin she was beginning to love. "Darling, I plan to spend eternity doing exactly that." The car pulled away, and somewhere in the city behind them, a new story was already beginning to spread. The tale of a woman betrayed, a vampire king, and a love that defied everything. Some called it madness. Some called it fate. Roslyn called it finally being seen. And that, she decided, was worth any risk. Listen, if you made it this far, you're not just a viewer. You're family now. And family doesn't leave without hitting that subscribe button. I poured everything into this story, and if it made you feel something, anything, then do me one small favor. Subscribe. Like. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from because I genuinely want to know where my people are gathering tonight. And here's the thing. If you think this story was intense, if you think Draeven and Roslyn had you on the edge of your seat, then you're not ready for what's next. The next story is even more twisted, more emotional, and has a plot twist that's going to make you scream at your screen. Click the video showing on your screen right now to watch it. I promise you won't regret it. This is the fastest growing vampire love stories community on the platform, and you're part of it now. Don't ghost me. Click the video. I'll see you there.